Hello boys. This is a little one for all the Guard players and Guard aligned and interested folk out there. Have you noticed that there doesn't really seem to be very many regiments that actually use military patterns and camouflage? We've got the Catachans, jungle fighters, and we've got guys like Gaunt's Ghosts, but we don't really see that classic woodland military army pattern on many regiments in the Astra Militarum or Imperial Guard. Well, today I'd like to tell you about the 317th Cadian Regiment. So, let's start in the beginning. Everybody at this point in the hobby knows a little something about the fall of Cadia. We know that the planet of Cadia cracked in half, and pretty much all of the planet's forces were lost at that time, except for the ones that were off-world or managed to escape somehow from the maelstrom that ensued. So, in that period of time after Cadia was destroyed, Cadia felt like it wanted to go on a little bit of a rampage, a counter-offensive, to take a bit of revenge back. Around this time, the Doctrine Militarum decided that they wanted a force raised by Cadia that was a little bit more self-sufficient, something that could be a little bit more efficient at being out there alone by itself for prolonged periods of time on specific kinds of planets. They encountered a star system where many of the moons around a certain planet were very heavily vegetated. They had very heavy vegetation with thick jungles and forests. Now, usually this would call for the Catachans to be involved. However, there was a little bit more of a nuance to the task at hand. You see, if there is a planet that is fully forested, fully jungled, with thick vegetation over the whole thing, with lots of alien threats of all shapes and sizes, then that is really where the Catachan thrive. Up close and personal, getting in there with knives and machetes and really making mincemeat and fighting in that guerrilla style inside of those vegetated areas. But many of these planets had a kind of unique problem that needed to be got around. If you have a planet that has densely vegetated areas, say a forest planet, but also expanses of open ground, you need this mixture of Catachans and then mechanized guard to battle in all areas of that planet. So this is where the idea for the Cadian 317th came into being. They decided, if we're going to form a regiment that fights on densely vegetated worlds, or at least partially vegetated worlds, who better to act as advisors than those who have been doing it for millennia? So, the Doctrine Militarum got their hands on a few Catachans and told them, we've got a assignment for you. We would like you to be advisors and to help train a new Cadian regiment in the ways of camouflage, concealment, and some forms of guerrilla tactics. So we can have a Cadian regiment that will bring all of their classic discipline, well-roundedness, and edge it off with an air of sneakiness, let's say. So obviously the Catachans accepted, and they became a key part of forming and training the new 317th Regiment. Now, in truth, the 317th weren't born out of the ether. They were formed from fragmented parts of old mechanized regiments that kind of lost enough troops and enough supplies to where they couldn't be a full mechanized unit anymore, and nor could they really deploy in number. So they needed a new infantry base, and they needed to find a more efficient way of using the amount of vehicles that they had left. So with their mechanized background, they decided to retrain an amount of infantry in such a fashion as to take use of guerrilla tactics and the tactics of camouflage, concealment, and prepared positions. This creates quite a unique form of warfare that 317th specialise in. Not only are they able to hold areas of densely vegetated jungle, but then they are able to spring forth with a vast amount of armor and storm enemy fortifications, which makes them quite a Swiss army knife when it comes to a forested world. Now, it was key that the 317th be able to operate for long periods of time without any assistance, so they needed to be able to do a little bit of everything, and that's kind of where they truly divulge away from the Catachans who trained their infantry. The 317th were to be used as a first spear tip into a new densely vegetated planet. They would perhaps operate for a year, taking up areas in the landscape in densely vegetated areas where they would dig in and prepare concealed artillery positions that would then create planetary no-go zones for enemy forces that would get bigger and bigger and encroach until you had a 100 square mile radius for a later planetary landing for a larger force, other regiments, or so on and so forth, forces to then resupply and begin taking over the world in earnest. They're also theorized to be very good at helping besieging regiments. For instance, if you have a hive city and you are besieging it, you might not necessarily have the equipment, manpower, or resources to be able to besiege two at the same time. So how the 317th might be used in this position is they would take up areas within the landscape, totally conceal themselves, and cut off areas of resupply for enemy forces. Picture this. You are a convoy trying to resupply a besieged hive city, or you are simply trying to move things back and forth through the landscape. You have no idea where the enemy are, you cannot see them, but you just know that if you go anywhere near those forested areas, the artillery starts to rain down on you. And if you are foolish enough to let the night take hold, then at any moment you could be overrun as they creep out of the forest to eliminate you. The average 317th soldier is a lot more similar to a Catachan or a special forces soldier than he is to a traditional shock trooper. They obviously prioritize stealth, concealment, and moving through the landscape unseen, and walking enemies into prepared positions where they are eliminated in a very efficient Cadian-esque fashion. Now, obviously the Catachans were working very closely with the 317th to train up their infantry, and this kind of forged a special bond between the two regiments. And in fact, to this day, there are a contingency of a few platoons of Catachans in the regiment itself. They're kind of like hold a guest space, almost as if they were Gurkhas in the British Army as their real-life counterpart. They're not a core part, but they do hold a guest position and do appear on frontline combat roles, almost as an inspiration and an on-the-grounds reference to those guerrilla tactics that they bring to the table. These few Catachans are often venerated and very widely respected by the Cadian counterparts, and they often become leaders for individual squads, becoming sergeants, and make up some of the most willing soldiers in the regiment to be put in the hardest areas to truly show the way to the more Cadian infantry that are present in the regiment. Now let's talk about the appearance of the 317th for a moment. The 317th have a classic deep olive green, as you would see in classic Cadia, although it is adorned with a woodland style camouflage pattern. Their fatigues are a kind of more green khaki than we're used to seeing from the Cadians, and all of their equipment, tanks and vehicles are also in the same camouflage pattern, and often, and well, more likely than not, adorned with camouflage netting. They use their Lehman Russ tanks both as tip of the spear assault units to be able to break through enemy strongpoints, assail enemy positions, but also they camouflage them greatly and dig them into the landscape and use them as concealed fire positions. Their basilisks operate behind enemy lines with great canopies of nets to conceal their long-distance firing positions. They do favour the use of artillery, which is something that the Catachans simply don't use. This is to give them greater scope of operational capability to be able to branch out and assault, take and hold fortified positions on the world to better allow their friendly forces to drop down to assist in the rest of the planetary invasion. The 317th are known for their ability to endure, to harass, to unsettle, desettle, and basically capture great areas of land and keep it from the enemy. But truly it is their use of camouflage alongside their standard Cadian operational tactics that set this force apart. It's quite unusual in the 41st millennium in this game setting to see a Astra Militarum regiment that has some kind of realistic capabilities of concealment. I think the Cadian 317th are the best example of this by far. Their camouflage netting and camouflage pattern is something you would realistically see in a real world scenario if soldiers were in this kind of environment, and from across the board they can almost be mistaken for a historical army. I would love to know what you think about the Cadian 317th. Do they sound cool? Do they sound a little bit too generic? Are you surprised that there isn't really much of an option for realistically camouflaged Astra Militarum regiments? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you very much for tuning in and listening to another one of these things. This is Relics of War, and thank you very much for listening.